Hello and thank you for watching. I'm Mark Krieger at the studio at the West 78th Street Studios. If you have followed their emails and their other communications, some of you may have seen my work. If you've been there for Third Friday, you'll have seen it. And this is the first of a series of videos. I'm working on this portrait right now. It's about one half done, and I was smart enough to bring it home for quarantine. And she needs some work. If you notice that her eyes are slightly crossed, and I'm going to have to make some alterations. So I thought I would begin with showing you how to do that, or how I do that. The drawing was started in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico in November of 2019. It's a migrant child. It's the latest in a series of about 60 odd drawings of Central American children that began in Honduras in 2007. So I use photographs. No child can stay still long enough for a drawing to be completed. I can complete a drawing on the spot in a couple hours. It's kind of a performance. It's not as precise as this, but there's a certain liveliness to it because there's a freshness in the approach. With the advantage of the photograph, though, I can dig in and try to get an extremely speaking likeness. This little girl is the third of the drawings that I started from the seven drawings that I started in Mexico. I waited to work on her until I finished two others because there was really something special about this face. Anyway, if you can take a close look at this page, you'll see some horizontals. Horizontals are really important in portraiture. We are hardwired to be able to turn our heads horizontally, and they're used I use them to measure. There are also hidden horizontals. For example, in this eyebrow right here, even as wild as the eyebrow is, in all of that there's a horizontal emphasis, a dark horizontal area in that eyebrow, which is borne out if you look carefully in the original material. But I use the drawing to get my proportions, and I use a couple of old school tools. I use the T-square, which I can use for the horizontals, and I use a pair of architects or draftsman's dividers, which allows me to just roughly copy proportions. And I use what I've got to get what I need. For example, I know that the iris is going to be round, so I often start with the eye, with that point. And I will measure proportion. For example, this is the width, one iris width here, and I use that to measure the white space on this side. One iris width takes me just beyond the tear duct. One iris width here takes me to the end point of that upper eyelid line that's going. And I also use that to try to space the entire piece. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5/6 or so iris widths between this iris and this iris. You'll notice if you look closely here, there's a lot of detail in this iris, and that's because I knew it was going to be there, and I wanted to make it right there. It's very hard to get the detail to settle onto the drawing exactly where it needs to be. It's hard to do that. So as I was checking my measurements, I realized that this eye was too far over. So I began erasing. I have to move that eye. You can see I've already started. I've done some preliminary erasing here. I've begun some very tentative replacing of this edge, but there's going to have to be changes. There's too much white on this side, not enough on this side. The tear duct is going to have to move over just a bit. This whole arc of the eyelid is going to have to change to arrive at the proper point. This area over here I think is going to stay the same. This is going to be smaller, but this hair part here I think will stay the same because I think I've got some detail that I need to have in here. If I don't do that, it's going to be a nice drawing. It's going to be a good. It's going to be a good face, but it's not going to be her. And I want to get her. The proportions were wrong, and if I want to get this child looking the way she looked that day in Mexico, I need to get the horizontals, I need to get the proportions, and then I can put in the detail. Everybody looks at the detail of my finished drawings. The detail is the easiest part. I always say that the last thing you put into a work of art is the first thing that people see. Next time, we'll start the surgery.